Welcome to Stribling's New York. I am your host, Rob Taub, on WORAM Radio, 710 on your digital dial. Stribling's New York is a show about business, culture, and people. We have a wide range of guests from authors, producers, actors, artists, restaurateurs, a wide range of people from the world of real estate as well. And today, joining me in the studio is my producer, Tony Simone, along with Rebecca Mason, who is a manager at Stribling and Associates and possesses a beautiful English accent, which is a pleasure to listen to. And she's also wildly knowledgeable about the world of real estate. Welcome, Rebecca and Tony.
Good morning.
Rebecca is, because I've learned everything I've learned about real estate from Rebecca.
Oh, you're too kind.
So, Rebecca, we were going to talk to you today about high-end luxury under $3 million. You can only say that in New York.
I was going to say, and all of us are sitting and smiling and sort of like giggling, but, you have to kind of bear in mind that, 15, 20 miles outside of Manhattan, that is real luxury.
Anywhere in the world almost. And Tony, although we almost never mention this, but Tony has a fabulous deal right now going, a listing at 325 East 41st Street for $825,000, a two-bedroom apartment in Tudor City.
The Essex building.
It's
and Tudor City is actually one of my favorite sort of like areas. If you're really looking for good value, you can really find it in Tudor City. I've been able to house, in my past life as a broker, many people there. It's a really well unknown resource, I think, for people who may be in New York City, budgetly challenged.
And it's a beautiful community, too.
Yeah.
It's like a quiet little sequestered alcove of New York. I don't know how other to describe it, but it's a very unique place. If you've seen the movie, and this is what I always tell people, and they can always relate to this, bring up a violent movie, but Scarface, they have this famous scene shot there where Al Pacino is following the guy, and he comes out of this beautiful old building, and it's on this quiet little block. That was shot in Tudor City. I believe most of the buildings there at one time or another were hotels.
Yeah, it always reminds me of Oxford. So maybe that's why I always sort of like it so much. It reminds me of home.
Well, it overlooks the UN, so it stops. It has its own private park. What else can we say about Tudor City?
You should check it out, definitely.
I think that everybody should go look at Tony Simone's website and look him up on stribling.com. T. Simone, Tsimone. He's also the producer of our show. So, Rebecca, what's going on in the market? Because there's all kinds of talk all the time in the press that the market is slowing down, but I don't see that.
This is why I was so thrilled to be asked to come back, because I think there's a lot of disinformation out there. I think we are seeing, the headlines saying the market is softening. There are cracks in the real estate market. But I think you really have to read beyond the headlines to really get a good understanding of what's going on. What they're really talking about is the very, very high-end luxury market, which the new developments have traditionally been catering to over the last 5 years. The big, large family, over $5 million. Typically speaking, our biggest sector of the market is the $1 to $3 million. The more, as someone described it yesterday, mere mortals. Section of the market. And that's really the strong bread and butter area of the market. And that is booming right now. I think the biggest difference that has happened in the market is that buyers are not just buying for the sake of it. There is still very little inventory in the market, and buyers are being very selective. They are taking their time. They are waiting to make sure that they are finding the right property at the right price for them, but it is still a very, very strong market. And I think we will see more activity in that market throughout this year and going forward than we have perhaps seen, with the big headlines in the last couple of years with the very high end taking precedence.
Well, I have some questions about that. And what would contributing factors be? Mortgage rates, and also the fact that the Dow is far closer to 20,000 than it is 10,000. So while the real estate market can go up, it's still a tangible asset that you can live in, and you can't really wallpaper your apartment or your rental if you have one with your stock certificates, but you can live in a place that you're going to pay that kind of money for.
It really is that, and I think real estate in New York City has now, and I think even, globally, been recognized as one of the safest investments that you can make. It is a long-term investment. Downtown, we have seen prices actually exceed that of 2008, whereas uptown, I think they kind of topped out at about the same. We don't anticipate prices going down. We see it being more flat, not increasing, but really staying strong and stable. I think the rental market has a lot to do with this area of the sales market between 1 and 3 million being so strong, because as rental prices have increased tremendously over the last few years, you really have to do that buy versus rent calculation. And I think it is a very difficult choice sometimes to make that jump and commitment to buying someone. But we are seeing more and more consumers jumping into that purchase.
The other thing that I see that's different back in the old days when condos were first starting to pop up in the 1980s is they would throw a condo together as quickly as possible. It wasn't particularly special, but it afforded somebody the opportunity to put little money down and go with that buy versus rent scenario. But now they're building both rentals and condominiums at super high-end levels. But I'm just wondering how far we can push the rental market before people are just going to abandon it.
It's really interesting because I think there's two rental markets we're talking about, and this has been in the press a lot. You've got the high-end luxury condo now rental market, but it's still a condominium, traditionally with a board package eventually. And you've also got the traditional larger rental landlords like Related putting on super luxury rental buildings and really changing, I think, the game in how they are attracting that type of market. I was at, I believe it's 456 Washington, but the Related's new building in Tribeca that they're just launching a couple of weeks ago. And I believe that their highest is $50,000 a month, and they've rented. And they're doing very well there. But they're able, since they are a landlord, to offer such incentives which really do make financial sense. There are programs that if people pay by ACH, then they don't have to put a security deposit down. When you're talking about a $50,000 rental, that's significant.
And some of these luxury buildings are fabulous. I mean, they have everything.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Bowling alleys, gyms.
It's actually built much more like a condominium than a traditional rental building.
Well, we've talked about the different amenities in condos, and it's remarkable. What do you see as coming up next? Are there any big new developments that we should be aware of?
I think South Street Seaport is one to keep an eye on. And I think also with the development of the Lower East River Park, that's certainly going to, I think, take off. I think one of the things I'm really looking forward to this year and going forward is almost a reemergence of the co-op as a popular housing choice. I think because you've got such a bifurcated market in terms of co-ops, condos, resale condos versus new development, co-ops are traditionally valued at about 20% less than resale condominiums, but there is a real savings when you're comparing it to new development. So I'm really excited to see the reemergence of co-ops as a strong, popular choice again, rather than, the same old new development, story that we've been listening. I think it's an exciting time, and I think it's really a time to have a look and see the choices that are out there if you are a buyer. They are there. You have to be ready. You have to be knowledgeable about what you want, and you have to make the plunge.
Well, Kirk Henkels was on recently, and he made a point that while co-ops have their negative aspects, they're adapting and changing to the market. They're accepting more money down. Some are allowing purchases as LLCs. And if you're looking to buy on Central Park West or Fifth Avenue, there are just a smattering, not even a smattering, one or two, handful, not even a handful of condos, available in those locations. So you're going to have to buy a co-op if you want a particular address.
Yeah, and I think also if you actually look at the market, traditionally out of the housing stock in Manhattan, 70% of it is rental stock. Out of the 30% that's left, about 68% of that is co-ops. Then you've got a much smaller but growing part of the condo market, and then you've got the 2-3% that are townhouses. and such. So it really is, I think, an opportunity for buyers to be reintroduced to the co-op, and the benefits that they, come along with. There are a lot downtown. I mean, condominiums are still very much in the minority, and downtown, we're a little bit more laid back down here. Perhaps the regulations and rules within the co-ops aren't quite as strict as some of the more trophy uptown buildings. And it really is much more of that community sense of living.
I have a question for you about rentals, because there's a new related building that's being almost completed on the Upper East Side in the 90s. What happens if obviously it's not that easy to do this once you price a condominium, but with a rental, if they find that they're not renting them as quickly as they had expected, do they adjust the prices accordingly?
Yes, I think so. That's typically the ammunition. They also offer more incentives. Maybe they do a 30-month lease with 1 month free that's amortized over the life of the lease. Maybe they offer collect-own fee or no fee. There are several programs available for landlords to take advantage of, I think, in the marketing. Critical is really the timing that they bring these apartments on. December, January are really the dearth of the rental market months. If they can be on and active March, April through October, then they will do, a lot better. One thing that I'm seeing is that we are actually dealing a lot more with corporate renters, high net worth or very important CEOs of firms being brought back to New York from overseas and looking for this type of housing. And I think, that's also one reason, a corporation can take a lease without any, reduction in capital having to buy an apartment. There are those options there now.
Oh, I had one final question before we wrap up. When there was a huge growth in condominium development, let's say Riverside Boulevard, there were investors that were buying large blocks of apartments. They'd buy 10 throughout the Riverside Boulevard area, and a lot of those were Trump buildings, and then they would rent those out. Are we seeing any change in that? Has that lessened, stayed the same, diminished, grown?
I think the developers have actually shrunk that type of investment in the building, and I think the mortgage industry has had a lot to do with it, and I know Melissa speaks very frequently on this program. Lenders don't like any one individual or one entity owning more than a 10% share in the building. So I think just as a natural result from the last go-around and the last change in the financing laws that we had, we're seeing a lot less in that. It's being spread around, various buildings rather than in one lump block as it used to be. That also guarantees, I think, the financial security of that building. So if one owner goes down, it's not going to drastically affect, the rest of the building.
That's good information for prospective buyers. And if people have any questions for Rebecca, call Tony Simone. You can email him at tsimone, Tsimone, at stribling.com. Rebecca, thanks so much for joining us. It's always informative and fun. Tony?
Thank you.
Sorry I didn't let you talk again.
Oh, no.
Big mouth.
I was learning again.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.